Welcome. Thank you for joining our Best Practice Series webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your host for today's presentation. Manu Vora, Vice President of the UsDM Enterprise Content Management Practice, and Aaron Northington, Vice President of the UsDM Clinical Practice, will be presenting. The discussion today will cover introductions, webinar logistics, and our discussion topic, how to increase efficiency of clinical trials with content management. We're very proud to have Manu leading our UsDM ECM practice. Manu is a seasoned professional with over 15 years of experience in life sciences, operating within several IT-related functions. Manu has demonstrated strength as a subject matter expert as well as a program manager for several global IT system deployments and programs. He's had oversight responsibility for over 50 successful IT projects at various pharmaceutical and biotechnology clients across the U.S. His key skills include portfolio management, business process restructuring, and of course, computer validation. We're also very proud to have Erin leading our clinical practice. She has 2 decades of experience in life sciences, clinical applications, IT business relationship management, ECM, and project management. She also has a background in compliance, vendor evaluation and management, systems validation and implementations, as well as process evaluation and process improvement. She specializes in global enterprise-wide IT implementation of technology solutions. UsDM Life Sciences is focused exclusively on the life sciences domain. We're the market leader in providing quality and regulatory IT compliance professional service solutions. We're headquartered in Santa Barbara, California, and we've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 300 life science clients. We offer hands-on experience with assisting clients under regulatory distress, and we're the market leader for validation accelerator packs. Our various dedicated practices include global quality and auditing, IT and virtualization, life sciences in the cloud, governance, risk and compliance, ERP, PLM, enterprise quality management, manufacturing automation and equipment, laboratory, which of course includes systems and equipment, business intelligence, project management, remediation, UDI with track and trace, and of course our ECM and clinical practices. The content will be covered in approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll invite you to post questions for our team via the message board, which you'll find on the lower left of your screen. Or you can join our discussion after the presentation on LinkedIn and post any questions there. And then of course, if your question is of a confidential nature, just shoot us a note offline and we'll be happy to work with you one-on-one there. The address is usdm@usdm.com. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Erin.
Thank you, Becky. So today we've done our introductions and a bit of an overview of the UsDM practice or the UsDM organization. I will be talking about best practices for managing essential content collected during a clinical trial. Then Manu will cover streamlining your ECM implementation. I will then be speaking about some innovative solutions for clinical content management, and then we'll wrap up with Manu talking about best practices for ECM vendor selection and a Q&A. As you can see, we have numerous horizontal and vertical practices that align with the life sciences value chain. We work across these practices to engage the correct resources at the correct time for our customers. Today's focus will be from our clinical and our ECM practice. We have extensive experience in the clinical and ECM realm at UsDM, and we are excited to share with you our experiences. UsDM's clinical practice has numerous capabilities that can be provided to customers, from site startup, clinical, biostatistics, medical writing, pharmacovigilance, to regulatory submissions. We do integration, system implementations, hosted solutions, data migration, and we provide many other capabilities in the clinical realm. UsDM's ECM practice has numerous capabilities that can be provided to customers. From delivery, integrations, content migrations, to strategy and support, we work with companies across all levels of the content paradigm. Proper content management is critical to the success of a clinical trial. From study planning and design, site startup, eTMF, eCPD, and submission publishing, ensuring that you have well-structured, easy-to-find content can make or break your path to commercialization. Statistics show that 70% of trials are over budget and exceed original timelines. In addition, 20% of investigators recruit 80% of the subjects. Utilizing good content management practices and establishing well-organized systems can assist in managing and reducing clinical process timelines significantly. Providing an efficient and robust process and exchange platform for sponsors to communicate more effectively with their partners or CROs can give them a boost in efficiency and can accelerate your trials significantly. There are many ways to manage your content and optimizing your processes for managing content in your clinical trials. The challenges are different for every company. However, there are some standard best practices that should be taken into consideration no matter your company size. We will cover these in the next slides and discuss the benefits to each. The first best practice is to crawl, walk, then run. If you try to run before you crawl or walk, you will fail. Start simple and don't over-customize your clinical trial content solutions and business processes. Evaluate your current processes. Whether you are an emerging biotech or a startup pharma that is looking to implement content management solutions, or a large pharma or a medical device company that is struggling with inefficient processes in managing your content, start simple. Don't over-customize your system or your processes. Don't look to completely refine all of your processes at once. While every company is unique in some way, content management is content management. If you over-customize your solutions, you will be married to a high cost of ownership managing customizations for the entire life of a system and more challenging changes in the future. As an example, for new systems, start with a goal of having a standard taxonomy and set an achievable date for having a first document in production by a set date. Don't overcomplicate things. Before your trials, look to accelerate your trial startup by evaluating the document processes to optimize them. You can utilize templates in your ETMF for a more structured, more organized process. You can significantly streamline your process using workflows and Esignatures, which we will discuss on the next slides. Look at sprinting as an option for implementations and evaluate what ways you can look to bring in timelines by sprinting to quick implementations. In the book Sprint, How to Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days by Jake Knapp, the optimal process for moving from idea to prototype in 5 days is a process that has been used consistently in organizations, and it is ideal to use in solving your process challenges in clinical content management. Usually having a complete focus on solving your problem in a sprint, which everyone has a problem in the clinical content management in some way, shape, or form, can bring a resolution more quickly than any other way. Sprinting is complementary to the Agile methodology and can really help to drive change in your business process. E-signatures. Use e-signatures to significantly reduce your processing time. This is critical in your content management systems or in your eClinical systems, as reducing the amount of time for processing, collection, and management of data will drive optimization. From the Journal of Clinical Research Best Practices, January 2016 article on dissecting electronic signatures for life sciences, electronic signatures can save substantial time and money. As a result, according to Forrester Research, the use of e-signatures has grown at an average annual rate of 53% since 2012, and more than 700 million documents and transactions are expected to be signed electronically by 2017. This trend applies to clinical research and other life science activities. For example, a nationally renowned clinical research institute that implemented an e-signature pilot program reduced the time required to obtain signatures on clinical trial documents from a range of 19 to 58 days to only 3 to 4 days. As you can imagine, there are many opportunities to utilize e-signature in clinical trials. With trial registry enrollment, informed consent forms, investigator agreements, visit reports, as just a few examples, it is very evident that having to obtain wet signatures into scanned PDF or retained paper copy significantly slows the clinical trial process down. Obviously, e-signature is one of the best opportunities for optimization of timelines in your clinical trials. Implementing workflows as a best practice. Workflows should be utilized to streamline processes within and across business groups. As an example, you can utilize workflows for statistical programming to route the program's applications from the programmer to the quality control programmer, to the lead, to the project lead, to approve your fast programs for production. They can be used for automating the process of performing quality reviews, completion, update, and verification of selected study and regulatory data. They can be utilized for automating feasibility surveys for site startup in order to more quickly evaluate sites. Whatever your current process, explore fully how exploiting the use of workflows can take days, weeks, or months off of your clinical trial process. Don't reinvent the wheel and fail fast. However cliche it might sound, these are good practices for clinical content management. Some of the most painful processes we've seen are when companies try to start from scratch. There are things that your organization can do to accelerate progress. As an example, when setting up your content management system or making changes because of your current process isn't working, utilize the DIA reference model for your ETMF. Talk to your peers at other organizations and share and be openly innovative. I saw a team at a company that took 15 months and countless man hours across the organization to define the taxonomy for their ECMF. They had a team of 30 people making decisions on it, and it was effectively a process that should have been defined and completed in less than 3 months. The time could have been better spent in building their system and the business processes that tied to it. Unfortunately, the implementation that they were trying to accomplish of their content management system was so completely customized and over the top with bells and whistles that the entire system implementation failed, which cost the company millions of dollars. Had they utilized the philosophies of crawl, walk, run, along with don't reinvent the wheel and fail early, their entire implementation could have been salvaged. They would have realized early on that their implementation was going sideways, and they could have altered their path to a more simplistic path and could have taken a more pragmatic approach to implementation. Now I will turn over to Manu, and he will discuss ways to streamline the implementation of your content management system.
Thanks, Erin. This is Manu. I'll be talking to you a little bit about streamlining your ECM implementation. Over our joint experience, we've seen several ways to implement several ECM solutions, and we'll be talking about a few different frameworks and considerations for your ECM implementation in the next few slides. So before going into an implementation, a holistic ECM strategy will generally lead to much more efficient gains. Going into an implementation, it's easy to just consider the technology platform and forget about the rest of the other parts of the framework. A few other things that should really be considered when doing any ECM implementation, whether clinical or otherwise, you should also consider the whole people paradigm process as well as content. On the technology side, a few things that are generally considered is whether you should go cloud, on-premise, or hybrid cloud, what kind of platform you should consider, what are the governance considerations, how scalable it should be, any interoperability with your existing technology systems that are already there. And these are the things that are normally considered when doing an RFP or looking for a product or a solution for your content management needs. On the people side, though, many times what's dropped out is the actual resources who are going to be using this. In terms of stakeholders who are affected by this, which could include vendors, partners, as well as your actual users. Also, the end users and the future users should also be taken into consideration to make sure that there's enough staffing in place and that they have the right capabilities mapped to the role, and also resource loading in terms of how many people need to be using the system in order for it to be efficient and fruitful, and to gain any people efficiencies. On the process side, in the GXP world, many times what we see is an implementation will lead to generation of the basic documentation around SOPs of using your new content management platform, but it's actually important to consider a process paradigm which involves policies, SOPs, work instructions, and any other supporting documentation that goes with it. And for large ECM implementations, what's recommended is to actually have a process remodeling workshops where you involve all the stakeholders in order to gain any efficiencies from your new ECM implementation. On the content side, there's a lot of considerations, but a few ones that we recommend is actual volume and management of the content, and we'll speak a little bit more about the value chain in the upcoming slides. The governance of the content, whether ECM is a horizontal component, so you can have, even within clinical, you can have multiple areas that use your system, but the content ownership is spread across different functions and functionalities. So those governance and security considerations should be taken into place when applying new content management implementation. Going over to the next slide, some of these are obvious, but there's a lot of things that are dropped off in many ECM implementations. And the objectives for a clear implementation is to implement an ECM solution that will enable the organizer to operate securely and efficiently. At the end of the day, that's the high-level objective. Now, within that, there are several key drivers that come from within our organization. Depending on your organization, sometimes employee productivity is key, sometimes commercialization is key, sometimes customer experience is key. Scalability is key for smaller upcoming organizations, and process efficiencies are very important for smaller, more agile, flexible organizations. Data storage efficiencies are very important for large companies that have a lot of data. And in order to support these drivers, there's a lot of solution enablers out there. There's an OCM component to large projects that we recommend. The single source of content access, which reduces something called dark data and increasing too much redundancies and duplication of content. Process redesign helps to enable some process efficiency. There's digital asset management, and also there's platform partners. Some of the key pain points that pop up from ECM implementation should be considered and logged in as risk items for your implementation managers to consider. There's obviously the legacy platforms, because there's generally something out there that needs to be updated and upgraded, so those should be considered. The investment that has to go into it in terms of dollars and FTEs from an IT perspective, the security of the platform, the records protection risk. There's all this process bottlenecks that comes from any compliance efforts and related items that that lead to quality-related bottlenecks that should be considered and accounted for in an implementation. And then there's legacy architectural considerations, where if you have a migration effort or something and you go into it and you deploy a shiny new system and you realize that it's impossible or very hard for you to get the data out the way you'd considered. So these are some of the pain points that should be kind of tried to curb in the bud if possible. During your implementation, the right tools will help keep you on track. Here's a few of them that we have learned to use over the years that'll help you just to keep things communicated and crystal clear for all parties involved. A project governance model generally helps to see what the escalation path should be and who's involved and what frequency for what component of your program. When defining project timelines, it's always recommended to baseline a project so that way you're communicating what your targets are in terms of all the different work stream and all the activities and all the moving parts that are going on. There's also a huge gain in having a responsibility matrix for situations where you have many stakeholders and not just IT. You could have several different partners. Nowadays we have partners for providing an implementation solution in the cloud. You can have somebody providing implementation services for on-premise. You can have quality partners. So there's many different companies could be involved in the same project, and it's important to consider responsibility matrix to keep things aligned. Next, I'm going to hand it back over to Erin to speak about clinical solutions and innovative solutions for content management.
Thanks, Manu. There are numerous solutions for being innovative with clinical content management. Some examples would be the use of structured content from a clinical trial to tie into regulatory information management systems in order to standardize global regulatory processes. This can then accelerate your submission timelines. Use cloud systems for feasibility surveys and site startup in order to more quickly receive responses to the site feasibility surveys. These could then be referred to at later points in time versus having to resurvey the sites for their capabilities, essentially creating a maintained database of sites that may be potentials in the future, if not now. Cloud computing should be considered as a significant solution to many of the challenges in working across many different organizations between the sponsors, CROs, and other vendors. Utilizing cloud capabilities can streamline the business processes in order to resolve your business and system inefficiencies that are adding days, weeks, and months to your clinical trial process. At UsDM, we are always looking at new solutions for our customers. We are brought in frequently to help with optimization of processes, and we are always looking at and exploring new solutions that can assist customers in solving problems with efficiencies. An example of one such solution is the use of Box as a clinical study exchange that can provide a cross-functional and external file transfer and distribution platform, which would increase efficiency and communications between sponsors and CROs or any other external partners by expedited site startup document exchange. It would also allow for faster exchange of data such as feasibility questionnaires, forms, CVs, confidentiality agreements, site contracts, and critical studies, startup documentation to reduce startup times. There are many of these solutions to problems for all life sciences organizations with the use of turnkey cloud solutions. I will now turn it back over to Manu to discuss best practices for ECM vendor selection.
For ECM vendor selection, there's a lot of things that go into play. It's very easy to go down the rabbit hole and simply issue an RFC, but before doing that, it's good to understand the content value chain. So where is content created? From imagine the life cycle of any piece of data. In the value chain, the content can be created by a user ad hoc. It can be created via image capture or from some kind of social medium. like a collaboration medium. It could come in from integration, or there's always electronic forms. So there's the creation component. Once it's created, the content has to be managed. Now you do this by applying security, you apply structure to it, you can review it and publish it, but there's a whole management component around this content. Once you have that in place, now you're trying to apply workflows to it. You want to make that content meaningful and useful. So at the end of the day, you're applying either life cycles to it, you're applying business processes to it, you're using it for collaboration, and so on and so forth. I'm sure there's several more things we can add on here. Next, once you have it being used for business operations, you are considering retention for your content. You can either use it for records management audits, you can schedule it, you can archive it, and then finally you'll have disposition of that content, which has to be managed properly and securely. Now, for your ECM vendor selection, if you understand what your need is going to be, you have a better idea for what vendor is going to help you meet the needs of your content across the entire value chain. Going over to the next slide, or vendor selection approach, this is just one of many, but what we've seen in the past is many times when people are considering going into a vendor selection, they simply go into an RFP or simply go reach out to somebody over an email and try to start solutioning. It's very easy to start solutioning and start developing, but what we recommend is a proper vendor selection approach. The time frame I've given here is pretty loose, but it's just to give you an idea and context around how much time it normally takes. But it's recommended to have an ECM strategy. You mobilize your teams, you conduct a needs assessment, you engage your internal company collateral, whether it's collaboration through internal mediums or whether it's internal SMEs or your partner networks. Basically, try to understand what your actual needs are and how you can best use them. Conduct an internal technology assessment. Many times you can find out that what you're looking for already exists in your company in a different shape or form that can be leveraged, and you may or may not need to buy a fully blown solution when you can have something much more tweaked that deployed faster already. And then finally, you develop an ECM strategy using the frameworks identified in the previous slides. General things you consider for an ECM strategy is something that's efficient, something that's available, and something that's secure. There's a development process for your strategy where you consider all the people that are affected, and then you develop a case for the change and a government strategy and what the support model is going to be for the ongoing solution. Then you get into, once you have a strategy, then you get into solution design. And you try to develop the solution and go through the RFP administration component. That's where you're actually going through the vendor selection process and doing demos, having questionnaires answered, and communicating that with your internal folks that you have collateral with. We're almost at time now, but the next couple of slides are basically examples of what I just mentioned in your vendor selection approach. Some of the things to consider. This is just illustrative, but you see what the technical fit is, the strategic fit, what the functional fit, and all these considerations should be taken into place before actually going in and selecting a solution for your ECM clinical approach. So these are just examples of some of the solutions that we work with. We have several partners in several different areas around the clinical space, and we also have cloud assurance delivery services where any of these solutions in the cloud we help to validate and bring into compliance. Now I'll hand it over back to Becky for any questions you might have.
All right, it looks like we lost we lost Becky there, and we're waiting for everybody to submit their questions. So feel free to submit any questions you have in the chat box there on the lower left-hand portion of your screen, and Manu and Aaron will answer those questions. Sometimes those questions end up being somewhat company specific, and if that's the case, we can easily take those offline. Sometimes they involve proprietary information, those sorts of things, so we can offer you more of a one-on-one with Aaron and Manu as well if that's needed. In the meantime, in the last couple of minutes that we have here, if you do have those questions, if you could just quickly type those in, and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. But Manu, as folks are typing in their questions, maybe you guys could talk just a little bit about some of those pinpoints, if you will, that most people have when they're running into some of the challenges that you discussed today.
Sure. So I mean, there's several pain points I mentioned before. One of them was around complex legacy architecture. There's IT investment costs that generally can drive into the millions. So many times people don't even want to consider large content management solutions because it's just gonna cost too much. And the average number of years that ECM solutions implemented for nowadays is somewhere around the time of 7 to 9 years. So it's and many times people aren't even in the company that long. Where the solutions that they deploy will be there for longer than they are. So the IT investments that go into it are a very big consideration and can often turn into pain points. And so it's a big consideration that people should take into place that that they're going to be using the system for a while. So they should invest wisely.
Okay, great. And we do have a question from John, and he is asking, can clinical ECM solutions be leveraged for other functional areas as well, such as quality, regulatory, commercial, manufacturing, etc.?
I'll take that question. So this is Erin. So yes, absolutely. Clinical ECM solutions can be leveraged, and that's one of the big things that ECM, there's a lot of capabilities from a SOP management, regulatory submissions, regulatory affairs, records information management. ECM solutions can be utilized quite heavily across all of those organizations, as well as by commercial and manufacturing, to have a comprehensive content management solution that goes across all areas of a pharma or biotech or CRO. So absolutely, and there are many companies that implement standalone solutions for each of their business units for content management solutions, which then drives up cost of ownership because you're implementing various solutions that don't, and you've got to have support for each of those, and you've got to have an investment from an infrastructure perspective, or if it's off-prem hosted solutions, you're paying licensing costs, things like that. So absolutely, they can be and should be leveraged across other functional areas.
Okay, great. Another question, this one comes from Stephen, and he would like to know what kinds of cloud ECM systems are available right now for clinical solutions. So what are the options really?
Renee, you want to take that one?
Sure. Cloud-based ECM, there's a few products out there. Alfresco provides cloud-based ECM solutions that's smaller, more scalable. There's of course Viva, that's a giant in this space. They've actually been the front runner and have been providing a compliant cloud solution. There's maybe you guys have heard of Box and Dropbox. They provide cloud-based ECM solutions, but those aren't GXP capable right now. They're not part of them compliant and don't follow GXP standards at this point, but they will in the future, ideally. And and once they have them, they can probably be used for business operations, but right now they can't be.
Okay, great. The next question is, if a CRO is managing my clinical trial data, what are my validation responsibilities?
So from a validation, if you set your CRO that is managing and hosting your content, and you're accessing their content management solutions, the responsibility is on the CRO to have a validated, compliant content management solution for your content. However, you have to do due diligence in both your vendor auditing practices as well as your vendor management practices and your SLAs with your CRO to ensure that you've done proper due diligence to make sure that they are properly managing your content. So the burden is effectively on the CRO. However, you have to do your due diligence to ensure that you're auditing them appropriately, you've audited their system validation materials, as well as making sure that their processes and procedures are up to par for managing content.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erin. And another question, what kind of time frame does it generally take for a traditional eTMF system to be deployed?
Manu, you want me to take that one?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. There's no standard timeline for deploying an eTMF. Like I said, I'd seen an organization, a CRO, that was implementing a enterprise-wide, this is about a 35,000 person CRO. They were implementing an enterprise-wide eTMF, and they were trying to overcomplicate it. It took, of course, they spent 15 to 18 months and never got to completion on it. When they went back and revamped their processes, the second time around that they attempted it, they were able to do it in about 3 months because they decided they were going to use the DIA eTMF guidance and to ensure that they could more quickly do it, and just made some minor changes to the configuration. So it can take up to a year, but if you use a good process, and I'm working with a small company right now, they're implementing an eTMF, and we'll have fully vetted out their eTMF taxonomy in about a month and a half or so. So it can vary. It depends on how far do you want to deviate from the DIA model, or do you even want to use it? Most companies choose to use that at this point, but I would highly recommend going with the DIA model if at all possible.
All right, great. Thanks, Erin. And it looks like we have one final question. What are some of the other tools that can be used for a successful implementation?
I can take that one. So some of the tools that we mentioned in the presentation is project governance charts, project timelines, responsibility matrices. Some of the other tools you can use is file sync and share solutions, anything to do with collaboration. Everything seems to be on a cloud and externalized nowadays, so things like SharePoint 365 and Box all provide external collaboration that will really help you gain efficiencies in your implementations across any type of ECM implementation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Manu. And it looks like that's all the questions that we have. We want to thank everybody for joining us today, and also let you know that a recorded version of this webinar will actually be on our website later on this afternoon. Our website address is UsDM.com. That's also where we have about 100 other webinars like this covering about 19 different areas of our business. So we invite you to check out our website to view some of those other webinars as well. If you have any other questions that you can think of as time goes on here, or as you're discussing some of these things with your colleagues, feel free to reach out to us. Our email address is UsDM@UsDM.com, and then you can see Manu and Aaron's contact information there as well. And our phone number, 888-231-0816, and of course we are on social media as well. You can definitely reach out to us that way with any questions that you have. Again, thanks a lot for joining us today, and we hope to see you back here for another one of our webinars here soon. Have a great day.